Well, friends, I don't know if everybody knows, but I begin holidays Tuesday. And I was reflecting with my partner of 30 years, it's our 30th, that we really haven't taken a vacation since last August. We took a little cottage time, and I don't know, there's that old saying about children. I'm looking at the youngest ones here with, of course, with Abraham and Camden. You're always a parent, right? And I don't even have grandparents or grandchildren, and people tell me, wait till you have grandchildren. You've always got some concerns on your mind, but we've had one of those years where we haven't, and I'm the first to say, we probably should have taken more vacation time. So we're kind of like creeping to our holidays right now. Anybody ever had that feeling where you're just kind of creeping, like, can I make it to my holidays? And you just realize that when you get on your holidays, you almost know, and we're actually so blessed, we're going to Rome. We'll be there by Wednesday morning. See the Pope on Friday, we hope. And but you know, we realize we'll probably just like sleep for a few days. And lo and behold, I get a cold a week before our holidays. Happened to me 5 years ago when we were 25th. I was going on a cruise. I remember going to the young doctor, walk-in clinic. I never go to a walk-in clinic. I walked into her. She's barely 30. I said, "Doctor, I know you're going to say it's a virus, but I beg you. My doctor never gives out antibiotics. I beg you, I can't go on a cruise sick." She signed something, and so lo and behold, I get a cold a week ago. Lots of funerals the last while, and very sad funerals. And I go to my doctor in Milton. You know, you get those doctors. I've had Dr. Batata for a long time. It's hard to let go of those 20-plus years, you know, so he knows me well. I said, I know you're going to tell me it's a virus, but I'm going on a cruise. I don't want to go sick on a holiday. He laughs, and he starts talking about the last time he went to Rome, and he said, you know, one thing, he's got kids a little bit younger. He said, I'll just warn you, I'm glad you're not taking the kids, because he goes, I took the kids, and I remember going to the Colosseum first time, had a 16-year-old son, and my doctor says, you know what he's doing? We're looking at the Colosseum, and he's like going, Daddy, it's got Wi-Fi. Daddy, my friends are playing in the splash pad back home in Milton. He's saying, son, put down the phone. You're standing in one of the great wonders of the world. So he said, I'm going to give you something. I went, Doctor, you are amazing. Do you know, I don't care what they say about viruses. Do you know, in 3 hours after taking erythromycin, which is an antibiotic, I was feeling, my earache, my throat was feeling much better. So I'm not a doctor, but thank God he gave it to me. And I don't think if I'd gotten something, I'd be standing here in front of you today. So Nancy goes to work and says, yeah, my husband's such a whiner. He's, he's sick. Anesthesiologist looks at her and he says, I got the man cold. I got the sore throat too, and I got the ear thing, and then a nurse said the same, and Nancy's like, keep away from me. Thank God they're in a sterile situation in the OR. So she was pretty quick, and he was even quicker back. She says, well, my husband said, you lucky doctors, you get to write your own prescriptions. He laughed so hard, of course, he laughed. He said, will you just tell your husband something? I don't even know this doctor. You tell your husband, maybe I can do that, but he's got a direct line to the big guy, and he's got prayer on his side. Where was my prayer as I was feeling pretty sick this week? And, the thing about prayer is I remember being a young minister, and I still remember my first sermon on prayer. It was out in British Columbia. I was a student minister. And I went through all the details of what prayer was, and I can still remember, saying, prayer is not like a Christmas list. Give me Jesus or God. I was talking about prayer being a relationship. It was about not just talking to God, but listening for the Spirit. I remember that. And a young little girl came up to me, and she was only about 8 at the time. And she said, I wasn't Reverend then, but Mister, I really heard you today. I can't just talk to God. I got to listen for God. I never forget that. She said, she really heard that. I got to listen for God. Then she looked at me. She goes, how do you listen for God? And that opens a whole big question. How do you listen for the Spirit of God? Because when the disciples are looking for help, Jesus gives them a prayer. This is one of the things we always discussed in theology as young ministers. I had books this high of how to pray. And I remember getting up on Sunday mornings and open the book up, and I read a lovely prayer. People come up to me after church and go, that was a lovely prayer. Oh, I was thinking, well, thank God for the person that wrote it, and then as I started to evolve in relationships with God, I realized, well, prayer doesn't have to always be somebody else's prayer. But there's something to be said about a prayer that Jesus gave, Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed it be thy name. And what a gift it is. I mean, some people choose even the Catholic school system not because they're Catholic, but they're sad that the prayer isn't in the school anymore. I'm sad that all religions aren't taught in some way in the school. There's something to be said about having a prayer that's given to you and that you can learn and you can say it. I was talking to Reverend Bruce about this message at Dublin, and my friend, and he said, I got a young person, and I was this way at one time. A young person said, the only kind of prayers that God really gets are extemporaneous prayers. That's prayers right from your heart. Well, as beautiful as that might be, it's interesting. Jesus didn't just say, just pray from your heart. He gave them a prayer. And there's all kinds of beautiful prayers. Mother Teresa, beautiful prayers. Francis Assisi. Prayers are incredible. So we need to trust that prayers are a gift. And as I was reflecting on my journey, I had kind of a strange thing happen this morning. I was telling Reverend Galen, I don't do a lot of Facebook, honestly, friends. I got a Facebook, but I got a message today. And it was from a longtime friend, and I had supported her in my last church in Milton. And when you get a little text message, you're kind of touched by it. And she said, hey, John, how's the family? And I said, hey, Marg, we're doing great. And can't believe I've got a gift to go to Rome. And then she said, well, you won't believe it, but I've had an answer to prayer. I went, holy cow, I'm preaching on prayer today. What's your answer to prayer? And this is when it went strange. She said, well, the United Nations just offered me $35,000 from a grant, and you can have it too. And I thought, this is really going strange. So a little warning in the middle of my sermon. You just check online, there's a bit of a hoax out there. People are taking over people's messages. This was not my friend at all. Taking over her Facebook, and I kind of went silent, and the person said, don't you want information on what's happening? Where are you? And I have never been so freaked in my life when you think you're talking to somebody and somebody's trying to get me to fill out some form that's going to get me in trouble or something. As we all know, I think here, we don't pray for $35,000, but we do all pray in our own special way. And I think what I've learned in my deepest moments of life is that prayer happens sometimes in the most silent ways imaginable. At 35 years of age, when I was told that I was, dealing with a possible colon cancer, I tell you, man, at 35, over 20 plus years ago, I prayed in a different way than I ever prayed before. And a lot of it was in the morning, a lot of it was through walks, and conversation with God really deepened in a pretty incredible way. And I have to say to you that prayer for me, for the most part, is sometimes even written. I know my retired colleague here, Reverend David, you're a real journaler, and I'm not as regular as you, but sometimes writing about the day, as I will on my trip this coming 2 weeks, is a beautiful way to express thanks to God, to reflect on your journey of life. How are you dealing with forgiveness these days? Those who trespass against you. How are you dealing with evil? Those things that separate us from God. How are you dealing with the daily bread that God provides for each of us and giving thanks for it? And I want to close with this beautiful book we've been kind of following this month, Daring Greatly by Brené Brown. And she really touched my core in this reflection that she had with grade 8 students. Grade 8 students were being asked about their journey of life, about what was really important to them, and they all agreed that belonging, kind of connecting to baptism, to my mind, fitting in mattered most to these grade 8 students. And these grade 8 students said that their heartache was the times in their life when they didn't really feel like they fit in. And these were the kind of expressions they said when they didn't fit in. Number one, not living up to my parents' expectations, not being cool or popular, not maybe being as smart as my mom or dad happened to be, being embarrassed because I don't have enough friends. Parents don't like what I'm, like who I am or what I'm about. When your parents don't pay attention to you in your life, you can feel pretty forgotten and pretty lost. It's a story of many people's lives. And, you know, the saddest story, I remember the principal said to me one day, retired now, said, you know, John, for some kids, the last day of school in June is the hardest day of the year because they go to homes that are very broken, and they're going to have a very lonely summer. So thank God places like here at Trinity and others offer camps. Whereas my daughter has told me from the Blue Water School Board teaching in Walkerton Way, she said, no, you know, Dad, I'm loving being an English teacher, but I never knew it'd be so much like being a social worker. She said, I never knew that I actually have students that come to school without food in high school. I have students that come to school and are living in cars, not living in homes or being moved around. Never imagined that. So Brené Brown offers us these final reflections for today. She said, as a wholehearted parenting manifesto she put together for herself, she says, above else, I want a child to know that they are loved and lovable no matter what, unconditionally. Doesn't matter how they dress, what career they choose, whether they get A's or D's. I'm ad-libbing here, but that's what she's saying. And I won't go into the full detail in her book here, but she says, I want my child to know that there's joy in this world, and be thankful for that, but that there's also uncertainty, that there is pain, and that together we're going to laugh together, but we're also going to cry together. So, my friends, we're all on a journey here. Some of us are grandparents. Some of us are adopted parents. Some of us are new parents, and some of us have been doing it for a little while. The most incredible gift that I think we can give our children, and I had one of my kids say this to me recently. You know, Dad, they said it quite honestly. Dad, we know you're not perfect. No, I know that. But you know, thanks for letting us know that you're human, and that sometimes, and this is my prayer for today, you know, when you face a lot of the uncertainties of this life and this world and tragedies, we don't have any answers. We don't know. And my friends, it's in that moment that I think we live the deepest prayer, where we let it go and we give it to the divine. We give it to God. And, you know, the Lord's Prayer is beautiful, and I love saying it. But there's nothing like the prayer that will come from your heart in your deepest moment, and you just say, God, I need your help. I need your love. That'd be my prayer for all of you.